Honorable the President.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we willingly acknowledge you as the supreme being, most gracious and most merciful. Look down, we beseech you, on us who are members of this Senate, and deign to assist us in the duties that we have to perform on behalf of our beloved country of Trinidad and Tobago. Open our eyes to see the truth and help us to accept it with all its implications into our lives. Direct us, O Lord, in our deliberations, so that setting aside private interests, unwholesome prejudices, and personal affections, we may treat all matters set before us with honesty, courage, and conviction. Through all we say and do in this Senate, may we give glory and honor to your holy name, inspire confidence in our fellow citizens, and make a positive contribution to the peace and prosperity of our nation. Amen.
Affirmation announcements by the President.
Honorable Senators, I have granted leave of absence to Senator the Honorable Dennis Moses, who is out of the country, and Senator Khadija Amin, who is ill. Honorable Senators, I have not yet received the correspondence from His Excellency, so with your leave, I will revert to this later in the proceedings.
Papers.
Minister in the Ministry of Finance.
Madam President, I have the honor to lay on the table the following paper as listed on the order paper in the name of the Minister of Finance. The guideline on the implementation of the Tax Information Exchange Agreement, United States of America, Act 2017. Thank you, Madam.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers as listed in the supplementary order paper in my name. The ministerial response of the Ministry of Works and Transport to the fourth report of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprise, second session, 2016-2017, 11th Parliament, on an inquiry into the operations and administration of the Vehicle Management Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago, VEMCOT, with specific focus on the repair and acquisition of vehicles for state bodies. Thank you.
Reports from committees.
Senator Cummings.
Madam President, I have the honor to present the following report as listed on the order paper in my name. The report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Gambling, Gaming and Betting Control Bill 2016.
Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Madam President, I have the honor to present the following report as listed on the order paper in my name. The report of the Joint Select Committee appointed to consider and report on the Cybercrime Bill 2017. Thank you.
Senator Small.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the honor to present the following reports listed on the supplemental order paper in my name. The fifth report of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises, second session, 2016-2017, 11th Parliament, on an inquiry into the administration and operations of Caribbean Airlines Limited. And also the sixth report of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises, second session, 2016-2017, 11th Parliament, on an inquiry into the borrowing practices of state enterprises with an emphasis on regulation of borrowing, purposes for borrowed funds, and sustainability of debt servicing ratios.
Questions.
Senator Mark.
Thank you, Madam President. To the Honorable Minister of Planning and Development. in light of ongoing construction projects at the Chaguaramas beachfront and the closure of the access way, can the minister state what urgent action will be taken to allow for access to citizens?
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I've been advised by the CDA, who has responsibility for Chaguaramas, that while there is construction on the way in certain parts of the Chaguaramas beachfront, the public still has access to the beach. This is particularly true at the eastern end of the development, that is at the car park, the public car park next to the museum. There's full public access to the beach. I've also been informed that a 5-foot concrete walkway has been constructed by the developer at another access point, so that while the public access is not as free as it used to be, there is still significant public access to the Chaguaramas beach. And obviously, when the construction is completed, it will be restored to its original position.
Senator Mark.
Madam President, could the Honorable Minister categorically state that in the construction that is taking place there at this time in Chaguaramas, there are complete access and freedom to the citizens to use the beachfront? Are you categorically saying there are no blockages, no areas that are not accessible to the public when they go to the Chaguaramas beach to bathe?
Mark, I think that answer was covered. The answer to that particular question was covered already. So if you can ask a second question.
Madam President, I am just asking the Honorable Minister whether he can confirm and assure the Senate that from the report he has received, there is complete freedom of access to the Chaguaramas beach where construction is taking place, so that the population would be given the assurance that there would be no, let's say, inhibitions when they go to the beach. That's all I'm asking, Madam President.
Government Business.
To you, Madam President. Madam President, there is public access to the beach, and when you reach the beachfront, there is full public access. Access from the roadway onto the beach obviously has some restriction because it's a construction site. But there are areas where there's full public access, so people who want to access the beach people are not restricted from accessing the beachfront and the Chaguaramas area.
Senator Richards.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, everyone. To the Minister of Education, in light of the hostage situation at the Metal Industries Company Institute of Technology in Arima, can the Minister state whether any counseling will be offered to the affected students and staff?
Minister of Education.
Madam President, yesterday morning at about 7:45 a.m., I was in the company in my office of both the chairman and the vice chairman of MIC Institute of Technology. And while we were there, we received a call from one of the officers of that institution stating that there was a situation that needed his attention. And it was brought to our attention that there was a slight concern about a person armed with a gun and who held somebody hostage. After getting all the facts, and I want to repeat, after getting all the facts, the decision was taken that counseling services will be provided to students, staff, and the parents commencing Wednesday, the 20th of September, that is tomorrow, and continuing the day after, that is Thursday. I want to assure this House and to Honorable Senator that if there is need for additional counseling, that will also be provided. I also wish to inform the House that Elder and Associates, that firm has been contracted to supply the necessary counseling. Thank you very much.
Senator Richards.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, can the minister indicate if an assessment has been done regarding the security at the institution as to how the individual gained access with a firearm?
Senator Richards, that question does not arise. You can ask another.
Thank you, Madam President. Can the minister indicate if security checks and upgrades will be done at the institution and others to ensure that this doesn't happen again?
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Madam President. We have been assured that the security that is in place is adequate, and that is one of the considerations that was taken yesterday in ensuring that everything is okay. Let me also inform this House that the incident did not have its genesis at MIC. It started when the person boarded a taxi on the way to Arima, on the way to the institute, and here's where it unfolded. But it began not at MIC, but it began in a taxi on the way to the institute.
Questions on notice, questions for oral answer.
Madam
Leader of Government
President,
Business, yes.
through you, government wishes to announce that it will be answering questions 104 and 105, and we seek a deferral to question number 106.
Question number 106 is deferred for 2 weeks.
Yes.
Senator Mark.
Thank you, Madam President. Question number 104 to the Honorable Minister of Social Development and Family Services.
Minister of Social Development and Family Services, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. The Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, through the National Family Services Division, provides psychosocial support services at its 11 locations throughout the country for individuals in situations that could increase their predisposition to suicide. Counseling and casework management services are available to individuals who are experiencing social distress, family discord, interpersonal issues, or grief and loss. The National Family Services Division also engages in proactive approaches through public dissemination of information via its radio program, The Family Line, Let's Talk, and community outreaches. The Office of the Prime Minister, through its Gender and Child Affairs Unit, also provides services to address suicide. The OPM is currently developing suicide prevention materials intended to educate children and adults on the markers for suicide, the avenues for help, and prevention strategies to address suicide. As a long-term measure, the Office of the Prime Minister, through its Gender and Child Affairs Unit, led an interministerial effort to address suicide among children, including initiatives to curb the incidence of self-harm and bullying. And in this regard, there is collaboration among the Children's Authority, the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, the National Family Services Unit of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, Childline, and the Ministry of Health. The National Mental Health Committee under the Ministry of Health, which was established in March 2017, is pursuing the following. 1, the development of a sensitization campaign that aims to transform the public's perception of mental health and suicide. The establishment of baseline data on vulnerable groups from existing trends in data and from private sector organizations with technical support from the Pan American Health Organization. The development of mechanisms to promote psychosocial skill development and support systems for persons at risk of suicide. Under the Children's Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, the following strategies and approaches are being implemented to address suicidal ideation present in children. 1, assessment centers have been established to serve as one-stop shops where children in need of care and protection receive professional evaluation by multidisciplinary professionals under a variety of child-friendly therapeutic approaches. 2, therapeutic intervention is provided for any child deemed to be at significant suicidal risk. The authority psychologists are trained in dealing with at-risk children and provide specific counseling for issues such as depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, sexual abuse, body image issues, and social maladjustment, all of which are associated with suicidal risk. In an effort to promote greater public awareness and sensitization, the authority embraces opportunities to speak to the public about the effects of trauma on children through radio and television programs, engagements at health fairs, invitations to speak at school and training institutions. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Mark.
Madam President, could the Honourable Minister indicate the various initiatives outlined concerning the various agencies of government in their attempt to address this matter? Would you be able to share with us, if not the successes thus far, but are you satisfied that those initiatives that have been effected by these organizations have really resulted in the kind of outcomes that you would like, so that we can address this rise in young people committing suicide in TNT?
Minister.
Madam President, we believe that initiatives that have been implemented are taking root, and there has been some measure of success. We recognize that we still have a way to go, and so we continue to pursue these initiatives in collaboration with the organizations identified there.
Through you, you did indicate that the Children's Authority did establish or have established several assessment centers. Would you want to identify for us how many assessment centers have been established thus far, and where are these assessment centers located, so that the population would be aware, so that children can be taken to these assessment centers to get the kind of therapeutic assistance that you mentioned in your contribution?
Senator Mark, you realize you've asked two questions there. You've asked how many and you've asked where. I will allow them, but there'll be two questions. Minister.
You're very sharp, Madam.
Madam President, regrettably, I do not have those details here at present, but I give a commitment to provide that information to the Honourable House as soon as possible.
Senator Mark.
This would be my fourth one. Right. Okay, man. Can I ask the Honourable Minister whether the National Mental Health Committee that you made reference to, could you indicate to us, if you have that information, who comprise this committee and membership of this committee? How often this committee would meet?
Senator Mark, it's either who or how. It can't be both. It's one last question, please.
You are very sharp. Yeah. Can I ask the honourable member, who are the members comprising this National Health Committee? Thanks, Madam.
Madam President, again, I must apologize because at the Ministry of Social Development, I do not work intimately with this committee. I cannot provide you with the names of the members at present. But of course, I will provide those names to this Honourable House by tomorrow.
Senator Mark, yes.
Question number 105 to the Honourable Minister of Social Development and Family Services.
Minister of Social Development and Family Services.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services has not identified the establishment of a soup kitchen in San Fernando as a project for addressing social displacement. The ministry does, however, recognize the usefulness of soup kitchens in providing access to meals for street dwellers and homeless persons. However, as regards the needs of street dwellers, the ministry has utilized a more holistic approach. In this context, the social displacement centers in San Fernando and the Port of Spain are supported by the ministry to provide services to this target group. These shelters, which are operated by NGOs, provide services which not only include meals, but also sleeping accommodation, as well as support for rehabilitation and reintegration into society. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Mark.
Just for clarification, is it the intention of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services in the future, given the rising poverty levels in our country, to consider the establishment of soup kitchens in different parts of the country? Is there any thinking in that direction?
Has not explored the introduction of soup kitchens as an entity in and of itself. We are looking at establishing social displacement centers, throughout the different regional corporations. With regard to the provision of food, given the level of rise in poverty, we are going to continue to utilize our food support program to assist those persons. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Mark.
Am I on the third one, ma'am? Oh, second, I thought. Oh, okay. I got a bonus. Thank you. Madam President, through you to the Honorable Minister, could you share with us, Honorable Minister, how many social displacement centers are there in the country at this time? And may I add a second question, Madam, through you. If you can identify their locations for this Honorable Senate.
Minister.
Madam President, there are currently 3 social displacement centers in Trinidad. We have one at Riverside, the Riverside Plaza in Car Park in Port of Spain on South Key. We have one in San Fernando, and we also have Hernandez Place in Arima.
Yes.
Madam President, through you to the Honorable Minister, is there any intention, Honorable Minister, to extend these social displacement centers, since we have witnessed over the last 24 months a rise in vagrancy and displaced citizens for one reason or the other in the country? Is there an intention to extend social displacement centers?
We have one for.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, the ministry, in collaboration with the Ministry of National Security, Ministry of Rural and Local Government, Ministry of Health, constituted a working committee to look at the whole issue of the socially displaced in Trinidad and Tobago. That committee met, a report was developed, and a note was taken to Cabinet. And we have since gotten approval to proceed with the recommendations contained in that report. One of the recommendations contained in that report is the establishment of social displacement center. The first center is going to be established in Port of Spain on South Key, on that piece of land that is behind what is currently Riverside Plaza. The approach that we are going to be adopting is a holistic one in terms of these shelter is not going to be a shelter. It is also going to incorporate a unit to do assessments, and also the shelter where persons can be rehabilitated and then be prepared for reintegration into society. So it is going to be a wonderful project, and we believe that at the end of the exercise, we are going to see a great improvement in our socially displaced, being removed from the streets and being rehabilitated and reintegrated into society. But we are going to start, the initial project is going to be in Port of Spain.
Honourable Senators, we will now revert to the earlier proceedings. I am now in receipt of the following correspondence from His Excellency the President, Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, ORTT, SC. The Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, by His Excellency Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, ORTTSC, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, to Mr. Ronald Huggins. Whereas Senator the Honorable Dennis Moses is incapable of performing his duties as a senator by reason of his absence from Trinidad and Tobago. Now, therefore, I, Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, President as aforesaid, in exercise of the power vested in me by Section 44(1)(a) and Section 44(4)(a) of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, do hereby appoint you, Ronald Huggins, to be temporarily a member of the Senate with effect from the 19th of September 2017 and continuing during the absence from Trinidad and Tobago of the said Senator the Honorable Dennis Moses, given under my hand and the seal of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago at the office of the President St. Anne's this 18th day of September 2017. To Mr. Sean Sobers, whereas Senator Khadija Amin is incapable of performing her duties as a senator by reason of illness. Now, therefore, I, Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, President as aforesaid, in exercise of the power vested in me by Section 44(1)(b) and Section 44(4)(b) of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, acting in accordance with the advice of the Leader of the Opposition, do hereby appoint you, Sean Sobers, to be temporarily a member of the Senate with effect from the 19th of September 2017 and continuing during the illness of the said Senator Khadija Amin, given under my hand and the seal of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago at the office of the President St. Anne's this 19th day of September 2017. Honorable Senators, senators are required to take the oath.
I, Ronald Huggins, having been appointed a Member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
I, Sean Sobers, having been appointed a Member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Public Business, Government Business Bill, second reading.
Honorable Senators, the debate on the second reading of the following bill, namely a bill entitled An Act to Abolish Preliminary Inquiries and to provide for the pre-trial procedure in respect of indictable offences and for ancillary matters, which was in progress when the Senate adjourned on Thursday, September the 14th, 2017, will be resumed. Some 10 persons have spoken, including the Honorable Faris Alwari, MP, Attorney General, who moved the motion. The 10 included Senator Wayne Sturge, Senator Sophia Choate, Senior Counsel, Senator the Honorable Clarence Rambarat, Senator Khadija Amin, Senator Dr. Danishwar Mahabir, Senator Roger Samuel, Senator Stephen Creese, Senator Gerard Ramdeen, Senator Wade Mark. Senator Dollaby.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Madam President. Good morning, Senators. I wish to thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the bill of such in-depth magnitude. That is, the act to abolish preliminary inquiries and to provide for the pretrial procedure with respect to indictable offences and ancillary matters. Madam President, let me categorically state from the outset, I am not a member of the legal fraternity, nor do I have the mindset as some of my legal luminaries on this side, but any civilian can decipher the haste to this debate that is a desperate public relations gimmick. Madam President, as someone with keen interest in politics, I would normally follow parliamentary debates, particularly debates in the Senate. Over the last few months, I have followed with a keen interest the various crime bills brought by the Attorney General, and I've always paid attention to the method used by the AG in all of the bills he has piloted dealing with the criminal justice system. Madam President, I was grateful to be in the Parliament chamber last Thursday when this bill was being piloted, and I had to look at the rebroadcast of the Attorney General's contribution to confirm in my mind what had hit me like a bolt of lightning that Thursday. I will assume, my apologies. You see, Madam President, what was missing from the Attorney General's contribution last Thursday was his trademark, mentioning of all those whom he consulted with and what their thoughts were about the bill. In my humble view, a judicial system which is supposedly geared towards the legal fraternity with the aim of ensuring equal justice is served to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, Madam President, we are trapped within a spiraling criminal justice system with a low detection rate. In my humble view, if your detection rate is ridiculously low, then criminals are not afraid of committing crimes. In fact, even if they are caught, it takes 10 years or more to deter them. Do you really think criminals are detracted from committing heinous acts? The bill, in my view, does not deal with detection, protection, or punishment. Madam President, both you and I know this bill could never be deterrent. In fact, a conviction may very well prolong the punishment, particularly in murder cases. Madam President, how can one attempt to move forward with this piece of legislation if we don't have more courts to execute? Possibility, we can operate a few out of one Alexandra Place. On a more serious note, if the Honorable AG had spoken about setting up operations throughout Trinidad and Tobago to treat with extensive lists of pending matters, be it through night court, extended hours, or special hearings. But we didn't hear this, Madam President. All we hear is a fly-by-night that sounds grand to my colleagues on the other side. God help us, yes? Madam President, do you know the majority of witnesses do not testify or have faith in the system? Over the last few years, witnesses can't be found, and many are afraid of being killed if they testify. Where is the plan for an enhanced witness protection program for those who want a society of truth and justice? Have we forgotten how Clint Huggins was murdered under the witness protection program? Yes, it is alleged he left a safe house. Within recent times, there was an article published in the Trinidad Express dated the 18th of September detailing the aftermath ramifications encountered by Osman Babulal, and we can all remember that name, a witness to a gruesome murder of his family. How has the system protected him and his sister? In February 2010, Osman was charged with attempting to murder 2 school children. Prior to that, he was jobless, and he began hanging out with the wrong crowd. My goodness, if we want to hasten anything, let's think about the children who are exposed to such crime. What mechanisms do we have in place to attract civilians to testify? What protection program we have after testimonials are obtained? How do we serve and protect in their daily operations thereafter? What about the committed crimes against our women, our elderly women? So many cases are unresolved, but we are here today to debate this bill. What substance does that have to our society if we cannot get the basics right? If we want to change the landscapes, we must earn the confidence of the people. Madam President, we must protect Trinidadians and Tobagonians. Whilst, like my colleagues, I support the swift approach for a revised judicial system, I am very concerned about some of the clauses being expressed. Section 22(2), where the DPP does not prefer an indictment against an accused within 12 months. The accused may apply to a judge for discharge. It goes on to say the judge may discharge the accused. With the haste this matter is debated, it's in time for the opening of the new law term. One begs the question, is this being rushed to benefit someone? This section is too vague. In process improvement, one ought to attempt to augment that which exists instead of complete elimination. In agreement with Senator Surge, my colleague, why not try to fix the problem before eradication? In my humble view, the Honorable Attorney General, elaborating on adapting or augmenting the current system with the view of total elimination by trial and error. I didn't hear about short-term goals, followed by strategies to phase out the old system in the long run. Was a SWOT analysis conducted? But of course, they would not know about this. What are they teaching our nation? Wajang vocabulary and warfare life? At the preliminary inquiry, the accused is given the opportunity through his legal representative to sieve through for any unmentioned valuable evidence to strengthen the accused's right of innocent until proven guilty? Why not benchmark to hasten the preliminary hearings? Why not conduct forensic research into the mechanisms of a holistic approach to perfect the system? Another factor for consideration is the implementation of stringent protocols with penalties for filing of witness statements. That begs another factor. Section 14 stated, police shall submit to the DPP any statements of witnesses in support of the charge. In the Trinidad Guardian, dated 16 September 2017, there's a report of allegations of a senior police officer assaulting a journalist. What if a case is filed against this officer? Are we seriously relying on the police officers to file witness statements on their own merit and judgment? Not disputing that they are ardent, hardworking officers, but one must adopt a microscopic approach to this act and explore all prospects. I am not convinced with this aspect of the bill. Cross-examination is an integral part of the judicial process. Removal of this would eradicate opportunities that may arise to strengthen evidence, submissions omitted by way of error or otherwise. The Honorable Attorney General spoke of traffic offenses and its success since implemented. Why not speak of harsher penalties to deter crime? I have not heard of an active plan to lessen our crime rate. So many countries issue restrictions to their nationals and warnings of visiting our island. In this current administration's approach to deter criminals from committing offenses. Now, this breaks my heart. Do you think this will register in the minds of tourists that Trinidad and Tobago has a revised Indictable Offences Act? When our leader, the Honorable Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, introduced the state of emergency, she was scoffed at. How many crimes were reported during that time? That is the statistics you should be extracting. So the esteemed suggestion is to eliminate preliminary inquiry, explore the possibility of starting hearing for hundreds of criminals. Where are the contingencies for dealing with overcrowding of the courtrooms? Within recent times, we have heard of criminals escaping our courts. Are we equipping the court with sufficient human resource to deal with the increased number of trials and criminals passing through the system daily? How do we propose to protect the civilians within the vicinity of the courts? What are the contingencies? Madam President, under this legislation, the Office of the DPP is given the responsibility to act within 3 months for decision-making process. Is that office capable of treating with this additional responsibility? All this information must be fully explored. Supplement information must be given to members of this Senate for consideration. Lacking in this legislation are timeframes for extensions and, most importantly, timeframes with penalties for non-compliance. Section 18.2 speaks of all exhibits other than documentary exhibits that shall be taken charge of by the police or another appropriate body and shall be produced by them or it. The only it I am aware of is the it that is presently being showing at the 5 movie tongues, the horror movie by Stephen King. That is the only it I know. I am not aware of any other appropriate body in our country that is capable of such authority. Madam Speaker, is it Army base? Sorry, President. Is it Army base? Is it Special Reserve Committee? What is it? How do you propose to utilize this appropriate body? What are the governing rules? Where is the operational location? Is it guarded by another body of our protective services, Madam President? I am not convinced that this Senate is equipped with all the essentials for solid decision-making process from what is presented before us. If it were given to a school child, this is a student-based assessment, I am certain they would have had a far better presentation. You see, Madam President, this is what happens when you try to copy and paste for the sake of public relations. Section 18.2 speaks vaguely of this power of this appropriate body, and this is unacceptable and must be fully elaborated in the Act. Can we trust that these exhibits will be safeguarded with perfection? Would it be stored properly? We have already heard of missing files. Who is to say that exhibits would not go missing? Who gives the assurances? What are the penalties if these valuable pieces of evidence are misplaced or goes missing? In conclusion, Madam President, I reiterate the implications of cross-examination and the probabilities for evidence that may arise and its relevance to the accused. I am also not convinced a copycat approach will work for our country. Trinidad and Tobago has a skill for innovation and uniqueness. It is not that the current administration is limited in thought and process. We can do better than this. Madam President, the intention of this bill, in my humble view, infringes the right of the accused. The process of cross-examination and fairness across the board. I have no faith in this bill can be proclaimed as is. May I record my deeper appreciation to the Honorable Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, Leader of the Opposition, for giving me the opportunity to serve as a temporary senator in this honorable Senate. Honorable President, may I thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak and make my maiden speech. Thank you, Madam President.
Honorable Senators, permit me to congratulate Senator Dollaby on her maiden contribution. Senator Roach.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for the opportunity to make my very brief contribution to a bill entitled An Act to Abolish Plenary Inquiries and to Provide for the Pre-Trial Procedure in Respect of Indictable Offences and for Ancillary Matters. Madam President, as you know, it's always very difficult to find something novel in these debates when you're speaking. And in this instance, I'll be speaking at number 12. After the first 6 persons would have contributed, more than likely, most of what will be said about, substantially about the issue before us would have been probably being addressed anyway. But I hesitated in deciding whether I should comment on this bill because I thought it fit in the first instance on Thursday that I will give way to my colleagues who practice on a regular basis in the assizes and in the criminal arena. At one point in time, in a different incarnation, I had a substantive criminal practice. I do not have such a practice at this point in time. Having said that, I listened with great interest to what my fellow senators and those who are practicing at the criminal court, criminal bar had to say. about this bill that is before us at this point in time. Two things jumped out at me immediately listening to the discourse and the contributions from all that have contributed thus far, is that it is recognized that there is a problem with the preliminary inquiries as it operates in our system today. It is a feature of our criminal justice system that has been with us, as has been said by a number of the contributors. It's been for a very long time, more than decades. I think they're probably a century old. And society is evolving. It may have met and satisfied the needs at that point in time when murders and indictable offences were not as prolific as it is today, where we had murders. Even 3 decades ago, we had about 12 murders in Trinidad at any point in time, and probably none in Tobago. Today, we may have 12 in one day. Far less the amount you will have in a year, 300, 400. I mean, it's just mind-boggling to listen to this kind of carnage in our beloved country. And I believe that something has to be done. People are crying out that something should be done. It is recognized that our judicial system is overburdened by the sheer number, the sheer volume of matters that are filed. I listened yesterday to the Honorable Chief Justice make comments about the improvement in the civil arena, where certain procedures and tweaking of the system has led to a more efficient disposition of civil cases. And therefore, one can file a civil claim, and within a year or two from filing your matter is heard and dealt with, which is quite a significant improvement from when I started with practicing, which is almost close to 30 years now as a practitioner. The same cannot be said about the criminal justice system. Over the last year of this Parliament, a number of different legislations were brought before this chamber to be debated and passed to assist in making the criminal justice system a more efficient system. One of my greatest concerns about this, and I heard, I think was Senator Ramdeen, if I'm wrong, he can correct me, I'll give way, but he did mention there were at least 11 or so pieces of legislation dealing with the criminal justice system that will pass in these chambers and yet to be proclaimed. Now, if that is in fact so, I have a great concern about that, because the way how legislation is being brought before these chambers is quite annoying to me. It is brought as though I call it in my own way, I call it fireman legislation, because it come here in a hurry. We debate for unduly length of times in going into the night at sometimes, which to me is not progressive. It is not an efficient way of dealing with matters that pertains not only to us in here, but to our trusted citizens. And those persons who want to participate by listening to us debate matters up 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning makes no sense. I mean, after a certain number of hours, there's something called diminishing returns that set in, right? And you cannot be as productive as you would be if you were dealing with something within a shorter period of time and concentration. This was part of a collective concern when the government was the opposition. They also joined in that type of discussion. Now they're on this side, the same thing is perpetuated. I have an issue with that. I have a concern with that, because nobody inside of here will want to know that they are ill. You go to a hospital, and a doctor who has been on his legs for the last 18 or 19 hours coming to operate on you or something, you wouldn't want that. You will be greatly suspicious about it, about his efficiency and his competence to deal with it. So I hope that what remains of this session and the rest of the sessions to come may not follow in that vein of these unduly long hours in debating things that are so serious. As a matter of fact, Parliament time can be much more efficiently used in dealing with matters like this. This is my own take on it, is that one can canvass views, pass a legislation, and get canvass views of the members before it reaches here, or if it has to go to a joint select committee or some kind of a think tank before it reaches there, and in this thread, it's tug away, you know. I mean, you ask yourself sometimes, this is the contribution, if every legislation reaches here, it is so flawed. I mean, we will never pass perfect legislation inside of here, but we will always try to pass what is the best possible legislation that we can collectively produce at the end of our debates and our rigorous scrutiny of what is being preferred by whoever is the promoter of the bill, as the case may be. Now, having said earlier on that I gave way to the members of the Senate who are criminal practitioners, on reflection as well and listening as well, as the newly appointed Senator Dollaby said that she is not an attorney, and I was welcoming to hear, because legislation that passes through here are not meant for the attorneys at law. It's meant for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, most of who are not lawyers. And you ought to be able to read what comes out of here in a comprehensive way and in an understanding way, what it is being used to curtail or influence your liberties. And therefore, whether it is criminal lawyers or whether it is whoever lawyers, it is not written for them, it's written for the public at large. And what is being promoted here is an attempt by the Attorney General, as well-intended as he may be, and I know he's well-intended, as most of us, I think, or all of us inside of here are maybe well-intended. But well-intention is only one part of it. It's whether or not our intention is going to deliver what we intended it to be. And I have had discussions with members of the criminal bar. I've had discussions with members of the civil bar. I have had discussions with a few judicial officers. I've had discussions with a few of the prosecuting arm of the state, so as to canvass the views of the wider stakeholders, and members of the public, who will from time to time either voluntarily come up to me, or I may talk to them about what is going on, what do they think about this, what is going to pass, how it's going to affect them. Or they may ask me, how is this, what are you doing, how is this going to help us? Now, the whole basis of this coming before us is to deal with making the criminal justice system more efficient. The mischief basically is that the system is overburdened by bureaucracy and by the imperfections that have developed over the years and become a chronic. And we are desperate, we are all desperate as a people to do our part in resolving this issue and to make our system much more efficient and much more reliable. But we can pass as much laws as we want today. We can have them implemented. But that doesn't really solve the problem. That is just one part of it. And anybody can go to the handstand and would have seen my contributions in the debate where the budget is being brought. And I keep saying that the Ministry of National Security, which gets a significant lion's share of the budget, ought to stop. And more resources need to be put in preventative aspect of our criminal justice, to prevent the criminal justice system from being overburdened in the first instance, right? Much more money being put into sports, facilities, and education, and so forth, social services, and education, as it were, in the beginning of our independence, where Eric Williams decided that the future of our country lies in the bags of our students. That needs to be some way tweaked, some way again revisited. But this amount of billions of dollars we put the last 2 or 3 decades into the Ministry of National Security is not giving us value for money and ought to be looked at in a different way. And it will assist in whatever legislation we are passing in trying to improve the system of the criminal justice system to be less burdensome. Because we could build more jails, more police. It's not stopping it's not addressing what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a society that is more law-abiding, that is safe and secure, that business can prosper, that people can behave and entertain and feel safe with their family and so forth. That is what we are about to do. Now, does this legislation lend itself to doing that? I think it is a good attempt, but I think from listening to all that is going on, there are certain things that jumps out at me again. For instance, the major thing is the trust in the officer that a lot of power is being reposed, which is the Director of Public Prosecution. If you look at our constitution as it exists, Madam President, we pose a lot of trust in a number of offices. It supposed to be trust in you as president to be able to be impartial and administer the chambers as will be expected for the benefit of the people, and not on particularly impartial side, but be it the government or whoever it is. We look at how our heads of public services are appointed. The Prime Minister has a veto in most senior positions being appointed. So trust must lie somewhere. The President has some powers, has critical powers, even though he's not an executive president. And he appoints the head of the judiciary in his sole discretion. That is also signal. That's a trust we put in him as well, that he will do the right thing. So trust is significant in whatever we do in a number of offices under our Constitution. That has not changed. And therefore, to repose the trust that we are placing in our DPP, we must look and say whether or not the distrust is well-founded or not. I remember, not to stray too much, from when in a different incarnation, Justice Mohammed, as he then was, he was the DPP, because he probably satisfied certain characteristics that people thought would have been in their benefit. He was made DPP. It had a lot of disquiet in it, in the department and so forth. But at the end of the day, what Justice Mohammed, who then Deputy Mohammed, turned out to be one of the best DPPs this country has ever seen. He was very independent, much to the surprise or what. I mean, he certainly was not a compromising individual. You felt that you had a DPP that could withstand any political pressure. And that is the type of credence, and that's the type of characteristic you want when you put people in that kind of office with that type of powers. The judges themselves, they have a role to play. We have checks and balances. If the DPP doesn't get it right under this legislation, the judges are there to deal with it. The judge in the first instance in your sizes, the Court of Appeal, and then you have the Privy Council. So you have checks and balances being built, that was already built in to cater for some of these things. I was reading over Senator Strout's contribution as a senior counsel and a senior member of the criminal bar, her concerns about Section 14, which is dealing with the public Director of Public Prosecution having his powers and so forth. I understand where she's coming from, but again, I'm saying it may come down to be a policy decision. Whether you repose the trust in the DPP, do you repose it in a master of the High Court, a judge of the High Court, or you leave it with the magistrate, and you do some certain other cleaning up of the act and leave the act as it is. One is suggested to me that the preliminary inquiries act as it exists. What causes the problem? That is what people need to understand. Why are we making a big fuss, song and dance about this preliminary inquiry as it exists? How many people in the public understand really what's going on apart from the lawyers? It is that when you are charged indictably, it has to go to a magistrate in the first instance, and the magistrate conducts an inquiry, not to determine your guilt or your innocence, but to determine whether or not there is sufficient evidence to commit you to stand trial, and stand in trial in the assizes, which is the High Court dealing with criminal matters. That is what the ordinary man and woman in the street wants to understand, in very layman terms, what it is that you are trying to achieve with this. You are trying to achieve that if you are charged indictably, it gets to the first aspect of the criminal justice system, which is the magistrate court, and that by the time you are charged and you are committed to stand trial, it will be done in a speedy way. What exists now, you are charged, it goes to the magistrate court, and for a number of reasons, you could be in a preliminary inquiry 4 years. 4 years, 5 years, 6 years is not an unusual amount of time. Now, let's say we clean up, this act cleans up that aspect. You're not going to be spending 5 years being charged in the preliminary inquiries before the magistrate. It goes somewhere else. Okay, the DPP now lays the charge, and it goes to he has to determine whether or not who will be charged. So, one of the concerns is that the DPP office, as it's structured and the staff, is certainly understaffed, under-resourced. And we have heard governments before and present government promise that they will, in fact, outfit the DPP with the necessary resources required. A lot of people just do not trust that. So it comes down to chicken and the egg. What do? Do you pass the legislation to empower the DPP to do these things and then give him the resources that may or may not come? Or do you make sure the resources are there, staff strengthen the DPP's department, and then you pass this to complement his efficiency, as the case may be? I don't know. It's something that we have to ponder. It's something, again, goes back to trust. Do we trust the undertaking of this government through its Attorney General that if this legislation is to become law, that the DPP will be given the necessary resources in order to execute and contribute to the system being more efficient? Because this is one of the problems. It is that we should probably shifting the burden, which is from the magistrate court to the high court. So you have the same number of cases coming, but instead of being clogged there, it clogged at a different thing. So it's coming down to a funnel. Somewhere, something has to give. Are you going to appoint more judges? Are you going to build more courts? Are you going to get more prosecutors in the DPP office? There are a lot of challenges. So I am not sure if this bill, as it is, can achieve that. If at the end of the day, when I'm anxious to hear the Attorney General, the Honorable Attorney General, in his winding up, address these issues, address a number of issues raised by fellow senators about the fact that, apart from the DPP having such power, almost to be a judge in his own right to determine whether or not this go and so forth, whether that, in addition to the fact that it will just lead to a more burdensome workload for the DPP's department, whether what he is proposing is going to be supported by his cabinet, or whether they will have the resources in challenge times to be able to deliver on their promises. Those are the things that I think that jumped out to me from this legislation. Whether or not it is going to cure the mischief, and the mischief is having a more efficient judicial system by eliminating preliminary inquiries. For me, I think it is a foregone conclusion that it probably wastes time. It should be done away with. People are anxious, okay, you're doing away with it, to replace it with what? Is it going to replace it with something much more efficient, or is it just going to replace, you're just changing, you're just delaying, postponing the hiccups in the system to a later down position? We don't know. Is this what this is going to achieve? I'm putting this out because I would like to hear the Attorney General, when he's making his mind up, address that situation to me, because my mind is not made up yet. I am all for eliminating the preliminary inquiries if it's going to alleviate the strain on the system and make the criminal justice system dealing with indictable offences more efficient. As I said, the civil arena, the civil cases have become more structured, more controlled. Once you file a matter, it becomes within the court system and controls, as you said before, the lawyers control what goes on by the adjournments and this and that. That's certainly, we have the civil jurisdiction to show how efficiently, once you put rules and regulations in and is monitored properly, how it can happen. It can lead to efficiency. I think the same thing is crying out for in the criminal justice system. So, Madam President, through you, I'm engaging the Attorney General to highlight, to persuade me, or to persuade those of us whose minds are not made up, who are not here with a mandate from party lines, as the case may be, because especially on this side here, we are all individuals. We have no leader. We have no leader of government. We have no whip. I take no instructions from nobody inside of here. I don't even take instructions from the president. I say what I believe to the best of my ability. I say what I believe based on what I gather from having an open mind from all members of the public, all stakeholders. And if I err out of a genuine interest and genuine concern to do what is right. As I said, this legislation, I know, is premised on the basis of eliminating what people have been saying, a burdensome, slow, sluggish, inefficient preliminary inquiries feature of our judicial system. I'm all for making it a better and more efficient system that we can see and have more confidence in our judicial system as it is delivered in Trinidad and Tobago. One of the persons I spoke to, I wouldn't call the individual's name, did say to me, somebody who practices at the criminal bar on a regular basis, and said that it may be even better in these circumstances that to keep the preliminary inquiry act as it is. And what you do, you eliminate cross-examination, because cross-examination takes up a lot of the time in the PIs. You eliminate the cross-examination, and you allow only a no case submission. So you lay a thing, you lay the information, and you propose to just have lawyers, if the accused want to make a no case submission. The no case submission succeeds, but of course, as the only matter, if it does not, it doesn't lend itself to have to go through to protract it to get deposition. You need to get transcripts and so forth, which takes up a lot of time. So with the elimination of that, what that person told me, suggested as a practitioner, that will solve a major problem, as opposed to even going through all of this here. All you do, you take out the ability for cross-examination, and you do your paper committal. You give the opportunity for cross-examination, and it appealed to me based on what I remember from when I was at the criminal bar. Because I have been in a matter, back then, I talk about at least 20-something years, I do remember in my mind, I don't remember the client's name, but he was a young guy, it was a legal aid matter, and he was charged with manslaughter or murder, because there was no bail, murder. And it took 4 years from the time he was charged for that PI was to finish. I had nothing to do with me asking for a jail man to know. The prosecutor wasn't ready in a number of instances. The police didn't turn up, that one didn't turn up, the van broke down, they couldn't, and he went on for 4 years. Eventually, he was committed to exercises. It took another 2 or 3 years before his matter came up. So that was 7 years, and at the end of the day, he was set free. He was innocent. It destroyed that young man's life. So this is that we are here trying to avoid, those instances. So even though he was presumed innocent in our situation, unlike the United States of America, where you have bail for murder, and in South Africa, in Trinidad and Tobago, that is not the case. So we need to deal with a system that is efficient, that can deliver justice on time, all the time. That is what we are seeking to do in this instance. Madam President, I found myself saying more than I intended to say, because, as I said, all that has been discussed here is nothing. I think the Attorney General has a lot to address, to think about. My mind is open, and I would like him to, when he speaks, he's not speaking just to the attorneys at law, here or elsewhere. He's not speaking to QCs, senior counsels who may be practicing at the criminal bar. It is the legislation here is for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Those are the persons who are most concerned about what comes out of here, how it will affect them. When I was a criminal attorney doing criminal law, you will hear people say that, you're making a lot of money because there are those who specialize in just doing PI, because you can get paid twice. It go on every time you go to court. After you go to court 15 times, and you have to tell you you had to come with some refreshers. I'm not going to come to court again unless you pay me. I can't be coming here day in, day out. Every time you go to court, you lose a lot of time. You spend the whole day sometimes in a magistrate who starts at 9 o'clock. And time by 11 o'clock, she now finished reading through the cases with sometimes 50, 75 cases before she can start dealing with one case. So how efficient that system is. And then you have long handwriting, taking notes and evidence and things like that. So we have a very inefficient system in a number of ways. But what we have to do, in whatever pieces of lesson that we are bringing, we have to think through this in a holistic way. Is this going to achieve the objective of eliminating preliminary inquiries and making the system that much more speedier, whatever it is at the end of the day? Or do we leave it and eliminate, as was suggested to me, some of the features that are known to clog the system, which is the unnecessary cross-examination? Because most times a defense attorney do ever allow his client to give no evidence in the PI. Why you give your PI? Why you give a defense at this point in time when you're not compelled to do? You wait and take your chances up in the size if you go up there. So, Madam President, with this, I can continue talking about this. I have no notes. I have no notes. I'm just going on my recollection for what has went on in the last year and my understanding of what is at issue in this situation here. I hope I won't be here tonight, 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock tomorrow morning. With that, Madam President, I thank you.
Senator Sobers.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, as may have been said before, we are here dealing with this Indictable Offences Pretrial Procedure Bill, an act to abolish preliminary inquiries and to provide for the pretrial procedure in respect of indictable offences and for ancillary matters. And when one considers, as I always try to do, the legitimate aim of the bill is to treat with delays in the criminal justice system by abolishing preliminary inquiries, which are sometimes called committal proceedings, and providing a pretrial mechanism in respect of indictable offences and ancillary matters. I was not present on the last occasion when the bill was first read in this House, but I listened intently to the speakers on both sides of the divide to hear what everyone had to say, to consider all contributions made. And I would like to start off by quoting a learned luminary by the name of George Bernard Shaw, who said, "Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything." I say that because I heard members opposite comment to say that this particular piece of legislation, and it's not the first time that it has been said, is part of a suite of legislation to try to get rid of the backlog that is plaguing the criminal justice system. And I stand here today not as a stakeholder of that system, because I think the term stakeholder, one might consider it to be a fanciful participant in the system. But because I know the system to be as bad as it is, I consider myself a prisoner of that system, locked in that system. And to be quite honest, with the greatest of respect to everyone sitting here, I cannot see a way forward, especially with this piece of legislation, coupled with the other pieces of legislation that has come to this House. I have been here and commented on 2 other pieces of legislation on 2 previous occasions, and I made mention of the issues that I think that can be dealt with to help alleviate this ply in the system that does not require legislative agendas, but simply political will. On that occasion, I also mentioned that I am not an individual who would come to this honorable House to attack any one person. I am here to deal with policy and the failure of the government to implement proper policy to treat with this system. In touching on policy, I attentively listened to the Honorable Senator Ian Roach, where he commented on the fact that it is good for us to listen to those who are also prisoners within the system, the attorneys who make up the composition of this honorable House, to hear what they actually had to say. And I listened also intently to Senator Ramdeen last week when he commented that in terms of the seriousness of the criminality in this country, in terms of the seriousness of the backlog in the criminal justice system, it is really disheartening to know that the government has only fielded 2 senators to contribute to this bill. And I want to say that the individuals who, all attorneys who make up this honorable House are my learned seniors. All. The attorneys who sit on the side of the government, they are my learned seniors. And whatever I say within the course of this debate, I mean it with the greatest of respect, because at the end of the day, I may very well see them wearing a different professional cap And I will give them that respect when I see them, within this chamber and outside of the chamber. But having said that, I generally practice criminal law. And I can emphatically state that with the greatest of respect to my learned seniors on the other side, I have never really seen them in the criminal courts. I don't know of any cases that they would have conducted in the magistrate's court or the assize, subject to correction, obviously. And again, it's a bit surprising when persons who may not have that experience in terms of criminal law come to this house and table legislation such as this. The effect of the legislation, the content of the legislation, is a mirror of the fact that they, unfortunately, with the greatest of respect, lack that experience in this field or area of law. I know it can be said that they take advice from the technocrats and whatnot, but at the end of the day, this bill is being laid in a particular individual's name, and the government has to take credit for it. But to be fair, there's nothing to take credit for. And being a devout Christian, it makes me think about the excerpt from the Bible, and I would want to extend that. We need to forgive them because they know not what they do. There's a lot to be said, and I have mentioned it on the last two occasions that I came here about the real problems plaguing the criminal justice system. I wouldn't want to spend much time on that because I really want to get into the content of this bill. But I think I have to comment on it, that there are a lot of issues that are alive in the system. And every time I leave this August house and I go back into my profession, because I will be there tomorrow and the day after, I am faced with other criminal practitioners who don't come to me and say, well, listen, you know, Sobers, you were there on the opposition side. No, they know that I was there sitting and I should inform the parliament as to what is actually taking place. Because at the end of the day, as I said before, I'm going back there to a magistrate's court in San Fernando that is not even operating at full capacity right now. As Senator Ramdeen made mention on the other on the previous occasion, it is on a shift system. But I'll get into that a bit later. The Honorable Attorney General, I like to listen to what he has to say. He commented on statistics. He likes to use a lot of statistics, and statistics do go a long way. But when one considers some of the statistics that he mentioned on the last occasion, one appreciates that we are basically faced with about 500 and something thousand odd matters, criminal matters, that are alive within the court system. 29,000. Thank you, Senator Ramdeen. Within the contents of that statistics, it was mentioned that there are 50 puisne judges. No, 50 magistrates, and I believe it was 31 puisne judges. But 8 of those puisne judges actually deal with criminal matters, 5 in the Port of Spain assize and 3 in the San Fernando. And then you have the 50 magistrates throughout the jurisdictions in Trinidad and Tobago dealing with matters as well too. If you have over 20-something thousand criminal matters that is in a backlog scenario, a backlog stage, crippling the criminal justice system in a magistrate's court, based upon the content of this legislation, what you are going to do is to transfer that backlog now for 8 learned judges to treat with. It is going to be extremely difficult. You are going to paralyze the High Court. And this bottleneck that will be more than apparent will cause great concern for persons who are participating in the system, such as myself and others, and also for the public who may actually be defendants before the court. And we must take that into consideration, similarly to what Senator Roach was saying. These pieces of legislation that come to this House affect them the greatest. And if we pass or attempt to pass legislation without a care or concern for those persons, we are failing the people of Trinidad and Tobago. In contemplating some further statistics, it was not mentioned by the government on the last occasion, but I had a bit of a read. On January 17, 2017, the Ministry of National Security organized a manpower audit for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. And that audit was completed sometime in May of this year. And it was revealed during the course of that audit that the police service are short by 1,000 police officers. We are talking about crime and criminality. And the police service, the service that has been mandated to treat with crime, is short of about 1,000 officers. This is something that the government should take seriously on board. This is something that they should get involved with and treat with, to hire more officers, to man these areas, to bring down and reduce crime. I listened also to the House of Representatives in the other place last week, and questions were put to the Honorable Minister of National Security about the content and the composition of police vehicles, working police vehicles, that he stated within this chamber, in that chamber rather, that the People's Partnership Administration was responsible during their tenure for purchasing 1,500 police vehicles. And since the government of the People's National Movement have been installed in 2015, they have only been responsible for an odd 30-something vehicles. That is ridiculous. It does not show to any concerned citizen a caring government that has proper policy in place to treat with this criminal scourge. More must be done. Tacitly also touching on another area that is cause for concern when one is considering or speaking about the criminal justice system, one must also look at the Forensic Science Center, because that is featured within the content of this bill, or at least I would like to think that it is what is being tacitly referred to as the appropriate body. Just recently, Dr. Alexandrov, who has complained on numerous occasions for many, many years, he recently threw the towel in. He said enough was enough. He had to leave. And to be fair, one couldn't really blame him. He has been complaining about the lack of resources, improper facility at the Forensic Science Center. And he eventually gave up. And being present here on a previous occasion, it was stated within this August chamber that the government had already engaged the Republic of China to assist in possibly constructing a new Forensic Science Center. And as I said on that occasion, and I am repeating now, it was the first that I heard of it, and since then I have heard nothing of it again. So if there are no steps that are being taken to treat with the issues plaguing the Forensic Science Center, we can only reasonably expect later down the road there are going to be more problems at that center. And the Forensic Science Center is a pivotal organization in administering certain procedures within the criminal justice system as it pertains to exhibits, which would include drug paraphernalia, firearms. And this is also what causes a serious backlog in the criminal justice system, because when an individual is charged with possession of marijuana, or possession of a firearm, or possession of ammunition, the exhibit has to go to the Forensic Science Center for a test to be conducted, for a certificate of analysis to come back to the court just to state that, yes, A was tested and A is exactly as it is. It is a firearm. It is marijuana, cannabis sativa L. And that takes years. Years. Persons have to go before the court on numerous occasions just for an adjournment because the Forensic Science Center exhibit is not ready. The court asks the complainant in the matter, what efforts have you made? Well, I checked them 3 months ago, and they say it's not ready. Can you please place a phone call now to inquire whether or not it is ready? Yes, I'll so do. And he steps out of court. He states that he's made that phone call, and it still isn't ready. And then we get another adjournment for 6 months down the line. And that may be all well and fine for a person who has access to liberty, who is on bail. But what about the person who has been remanded? He has to wait, in his case, 28 days to come up again for the same story. Nothing has been done about the Forensic Science Center. And I would not like to think that I've come here and I've mentioned it. On the last occasion, I'm here mentioning it again. And if I'm allowed to come back again, that I'm met with the same problem. Because I was just there last week and that was the situation. And I would also want to touch again on statistics in terms of recidivism. About 60%, 50 to 55, maybe 60% of the population in the prisons are recidivists. Persons who would have been released from custody and for reasons, not unknown, but for reasons they can't be employed. And unfortunately, they commit offenses whilst they are on the outside. And I definitely don't want to offend anyone. I would like to give an example. I was visited sometime within the last 2 weeks by an ex-convict who was convicted because he was involved in a kidnapping. There's a very distinguished member of this house who also spoke to that individual. And in speaking to that individual, he gave that individual very, very good advice. The individual knows who I'm referring to. And when that gentleman came to see me, he, subsequent to being released from prison for a kidnapping charge, and conviction rather, he has a degree now in information technology. And he has been actively looking for a job subsequent to getting that degree. He's actually studying for his master's now. And there's no avenue for him to be employed. None. And legislation should come to this House to deal with recidivism, to deal with ex-convicts who have been freed, granted their liberty, that the state has a policy to treat with employing ex-convicts.
Senator Stovall, you have spent some time on making certain points about the general situation with respect to crime and criminal justice. At this stage, though, I'm going to ask you to now focus on the matter at hand, which is the bill, okay? Yeah.
I was just about to get into it, please, Madam President. I'm so guided. In particular, with respect to the bill, I have two real main issues. And the first deals with the fact that the core of the bill has shifted responsibility for treating with issues in the magistrate's court as it pertains to preliminary inquiries from the magistrate really and truly to the DPP's office. And it begs the question whether or not any consultation has really been done with the DPP's office to determine whether or not they're in a position to take on this new caseload, whether or not there are sufficient prosecutors assigned to the office to treat with the magnitude of work that is going to come to them, whether or not the DPP's office has enough facilities available to treat with these issues. And I didn't get from the contributions made by the government that any consultation was had with the DPP's office thus far, that any increase in manpower was provided for the DPP's office, that any increase in facilities and infrastructure has been given to them, any allocation in terms of budget has been provided for them to deal with these issues. I also had an issue with the fact that cross-examination would no longer be part of the procedure within the preliminary inquiry stage. I listened to the comment by Senator Roach that he would have spoken to a practicing criminal attorney about cross-examination being removed. And I tend to agree with that as well as dissent from that. Cross-examination in terms of a preliminary inquiry, in my opinion, is very important. And I'll give you an example as to why. There are situations where the police, in preparing witness statements to be provided to the DPP's office, these statements are untrue. And the DPP's office now, they're supposed to have the responsibility to go through these statements and ensure that what is contained within in them are true and correct. That the witness is saying certain things that can be tested, and it is tested through cross-examination. There was a case that I was recently involved in where 3 persons were charged for murder due to a fight at a bar, whatever the case is. One of the witnesses came to court.
Matter, Senator Subas.
No, please, my lady.
This
No,
is
please,
a matter
Madam
that is
President.
finished
Yes,
before the
please.
courts? Okay, continue.
And upon cross-examination of that individual, the statement contained that the witness was actually present when the incident occurred. He saw the fight from start to finish, and he is giving a proper account of it within the content of his witness statement. And upon cross-examination of that witness, it was unearthed that he actually did not see anything that night. He commented that yes, he did in fact see the fight that took place within the bar, but not on that night. And upon further cross-examination, it was revealed that in actuality, the fight that he saw was on a video recording of the incident itself. That was shown to him by the police, and the police crafted the witness statement and told him, sign that, that's yours. Eventually, the matter was knocked down and certain things occurred. But had it not been for cross-examination, the DPP's office would have more than likely said, listen, we're going to indict these persons. They've already spent 3 years in custody with no bail, no access to bail. And now this matter is going to the High Court. May take another 2 to 3 years to reach to the High Court. And then that entire situation, which was illuminated 3 years prior, would now be dealt with in the High Court, in the SIs. And that would have been done by virtue of cross-examination. So it's in my opinion, to remove cross-examination may not benefit persons who are trapped in the system as much as we may think it to be. Getting down to the bill. Having reviewed the bill, I recognize that many of the senior persons within this chambers have commented on several areas of the bill that I would also like to just touch on. The first is with section 14, dealing with pretrial procedure. Basically, in a nutshell, it deals with disclosure, the police ability to gather evidence and transmit that evidence to the DPP's office. And I do have an issue that no time has been set to control the amount of time that the police have to gather this evidence and transfer it to the DPP's office. That it could very well take the police officers, and it has been shown in the past in matters that I have dealt with, some 2 to 3 years before witness statements can be ascertained and filed. 2 to 3 years. That is insufficient. There must be some type of time frame put here and a consequence attached. I heard Senator Roach comment upon the efficiency of the civil procedures. And I would want to say, because I do a bit of civil myself, that one of the reasons that civil matters are conducted with such speed and efficiency is because of sanctions. Because your client would be forced to pay certain sanctions, or you would be struck with certain sanctions if certain things aren't done. There are no sanctions here for a police officer who takes his time to compile witness statements and serve them on the DPP's office. I know that in terms of holistically treating with it may be very difficult for the government to implement a sanction here because you're dealing with crime. You're dealing with an alleged accused person. But a sanction must be put in place because when we juxtapose the type of officers that we have, not all of them being bad, the majority of them being good, but the ones who take their time to deal with these things, we must implement some type of sanction here. In section 15, we are dealing with the service of the documents subsequent to the DPP receiving them to the attorneys in the matter. Section 15 deals with the Director of Public Prosecution shall within 3 months of receiving documents pursuant to section 14 or within such further period of time, such period as a magistrate may on application permit, cause a copy of the complaint and of the statements, documentary exhibits, and a list of exhibits which he intends to produce in evidence at trial to be served on the accused person or his attorney at law. 3 months subsequent to getting the statements. After it takes about 2 years for these statements to reach the DPP's office, the complement of prosecutors that are currently there, they have 3 months to go through these documents and then forward them to the attorney or to the accused person. It is not realistic. It is not realistic. With the complement of prosecutors at the DPP's office, it is impossible for them to do that in 3 months. I have been involved in matters wherein we have a matter listed to start to proceed at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. A prosecutor has been doing a trial at Mayaro's court and has to come up to San Fernando to get this other trial started. And we are human beings. You have these prosecutors who are overworked, have several cases to deal with. You are telling me or telling this chamber that they have to be prepared with these documents within that time period of 3 months. Realistically speaking, it is not going to happen. So what you're going to have happening, you're going to have prosecutors who have to apply to the magistrate's court for extensions, upon extensions, upon extensions, to be in a position to forward these documents to the attorney or to his client. You're going to have persons who are going to be languishing in prison while this situation is going to be played out. Section 16 deals with an accused person or his legal representative disclosing his defense basically to the Director of Public Prosecutions. I have a very serious issue with that. I can say that I know, in terms of the criminal practitioners that I know, no criminal practitioner who would feel comfortable disclosing his or her defense to the DPP's office. Not that we are trying to impugn the character of that office, but it would be difficult for us to so do. And the defense itself is not limited to paper documentation. It can also include other exhibits. One must appreciate that we have no real way of knowing where these documents are going to be held. What is to be done with these documents when they're in the custody of the DPP's office? How are we supposed to be assured that the documents that we give to them will be what will be returned to us at the appropriate time. Something must be put in place to give or to install trust in practitioners within the system to comply with something such as this. And as it is right now, with the current rate of things and the current state of affairs within the system, no practitioner, no criminal, no serious criminal practitioner would want to adhere to this piece of legislation. Moving on to section 18. Again, section 18.2 deals with an appropriate body, the custody of information, custody of documentary exhibits. And again, when one juxtaposes what happens with exhibits being filed at the Forensic Science Center, which currently now is the appropriate body who has charge of certain documents, certain exhibits, we know that things have gone missing there. There's the Calypso, where the Calypsonian would have commented that the rat devoured the cocaine. It is very likely, highly possible, that exhibits that go to this center would be lost. It could in fact be devoured. What is the position of persons left thereafter? What assurances are we going to get that this appropriate body, if it is in fact the Forensic Science Center, has mechanisms in place to treat with this new charge upon them? What is the sanction that is going to be put in place to treat with delinquency at that institution? And it may very well be it may very well not be delinquency on their part, because they have been crying out for change. They have been crying out for increased resources. And if the government is placing all of this pressure upon them and have not made or met the requisite resources that have been asked of them, one can only expect nothing but chaos if this is implemented. Steps must be taken first to ensure that these agencies are equipped properly to treat with this new situation so that they can be dealt with effectively. I don't want to rush, but I also had a concern with section 21, which loosely deals with the chain of custody of documents, the transmission of documents. Again, there's no check and balance put in place to ensure that that system in and of itself is foolproof. You have issues, for example, that occur in the United States, wherein there's a custody lockup, a chain, an exhibit lockup. In the United States, there are situations and examples where exhibits that have been placed in this lockup have gone missing. There are situations where I could recall a shipment of cocaine, some cocaine that would have been stored at this exhibit lockup would have been replaced with sugar. And when the prosecutor in the matter went to retrieve the exhibit for trial, the ants literally ate all the sugar. So there was no exhibit for trial. And definitely it has occurred here within Trinidad and Tobago, where exhibits have gone missing within the Forensic Science Center. We need to put something in place to ensure that the chain of custody of evidence is kept secure. I also, and I think, which I had, the biggest issue I had within the content of this document, section 22.
Senator Sobers, you have 5 more minutes.
Grateful, please. Section 22. Section 22, as many persons have commented before, is really and truly the new section 34. Section 22 allows for the Director of Public Prosecution, subsequent to receiving the documents, if he hasn't filed an indictment within 12 months, that an accused person can make an application to a judge for the matters to be dismissed. given the inadequate content, the lack of facilities, the lack of prosecutors at the DPP's office, it is impossible for him to do that within 12 months. I would like to say impossible. I would like to say impossible. And I think we need to, if we want to fix that section, extend the time a bit to allow him to go through these documents as he should. And also limit the type of offenses that would be caught within Section 22. Not to allow persons who would have been charged for serious blood crimes and offenses to be able to access liberty by some mere technicality. Now, I also had a look at Section 26, which also eliminated the ability for persons to elect in terms of their mode of trial. I think something needs to be done where we change that and give back election to the person who is before the court, because at the end of the day, it is their matter and they should have a say in that type of election. But we on this side of the bench, of the aisle, have taken upon certain measures to proffer certain amendments to try to assist in terms of this piece of legislation. And we, in particular, the amendments would treat with Clause 14, Clause 15, wherein, we, as I mentioned before in my presentation, we dealt with certain aspects of disclosure. We would want to place some amendments there to put sanctions in place for delinquent police officers who don't deliver the exhibits on time and the evidence on time to the DPP's office. We would also want to implement a new clause 20 and 21, which would basically allow for a no-case submission before the matters are sent to the High Court. And that, I think, would be in line with what Senator Roach was discussing. If we are going about dealing with this bill, removing cross-examination, we're going to try to give the accused the ability to file or make some type of written submission to proffer a no case if the evidence is not sufficient for the individual to go to the High Court. In closing, I would want to, I know that this bill is really pre-trial procedure, and we would have debated on the plea agreement and plea discussion before. But I really want to plea and bargain with the government here this morning that more needs to be done before we deal with an aggressive legislative agenda. I want to plea and bargain that if it is we are going about dealing with an aggressive legislative agenda, that we do other things in tandem with that legislative agenda that don't require us having to sit here and to debate on these things, so that the actual effect is actually felt outside of this chamber. That I can come back here if I'm given the opportunity 2 or 3 months down the road to actually come in and say, listen, yes, things have changed. It can work. The legislation will work in tandem with the things that are being done on the outside. Because that's the only way that we'll be able to be successful in terms of giving proper hope to the people of Trinidad and Tobago who are members of the criminal justice system. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate the opportunity to join in the debate on this bill, which is an act to establish the preliminary inquiries and to provide for the pre-trial procedure in respect of indictable offences and for ancillary matters. Madam President, I must say that it was never my intention to contribute on this bill at the beginning, because I recognize that this bill treats with issues that are best understood by those who practice at the criminal bar. And I have listened intently. However, Madam President, I had a major challenge in that, as everyone knows, I'm a regular, normal person. And I've had many interactions with people and sundry persons all around who've asked my views on the matter. And it caused me to have to do a deeper dive. Because I think that when we are debating issues that could potentially affect people's liberty, it requires a really intensive look. Madam President, when I listened intently when the Honorable Attorney General made his presentation, and he tried to cover many issues, and I wasn't too sure, Madam President, as to what is the intent, the general intent of the bill. Madam President, I'm on the record here as saying that I don't expect any piece of legislation to be perfect. And there's a changeover. But Madam President, I also am of the view, I am on the record as saying I'm prepared to accept a 60 or 70% solution, because no bill will ever be in a way in which it's 90% perfect. We'll probably never get it. But I have questions and I have challenges. I always come with an open mind, Madam President. I think that my record here in the Senate demonstrates that I have an open mind on every issue. And if, Madam President, one of the intents of this bill is to ease the pressure on the judicial system by removing the preliminary inquiries, my natural intent I have an analytical brain, my natural intent is to ask the opposite question. Will the removal of is it possible, is it within the realm of possibility that removing the preliminary inquiry, could it open the gateway for grave injustice or lead to greater, rather than fewer clogs in the system? Is that not a possibility? And I always tend to that is how I attack an issue, because I understand the argument for, and I tend to ask the opposite question. Is that not something that is possible? And I'm struggling. Madam President, I think that it's important that, forgive me, Mr. Vice President, no disrespect is intended, Mr. Vice President. Many apologies. I think that, Mr. Vice President, yesterday evening at a landmark hearing by my colleague, chaired by my colleague, the most respectful and honorable Senator Stephen Crease, the Prime Minister of this country sat before a Joint Select Committee. And kudos have to be given. I have no recollection of any such thing happening in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. A sitting Prime Minister opening himself up to questions, random questions on any issue, and being able to provide responses. For me, that speaks highly of our democracy in this country. But Mr. Vice President, one of the issues responded to by the Honorable Prime Minister was the issues around the procurement bill. And in his response was one of the challenges that the government faced with bringing that into being is the fact of the administrative system simply not being ready to proclaim the legislation. You with the best of intents and with the best of wanting to get something done, having the system ready and in this case, having a procurement regulator in place was some of the major stumbling blocks. So if I apply that logic, that you want to get something done, but if you want to really get it done, you have to have the administrative things to support it to make it happen. So I take from that for me, that is a simple piece of logic. I accept it and I support it, because it explains a lot of where my thinking is where we are. We are potentially setting up a system here for administrative gridlock in the court system in Trinidad and Tobago. That is my read. I mean, I have a good friend, Mr. Vice President, if you permit me to digress for a second, went to pay a traffic ticket. And he spent 3.5 hours at the Port of St. Magistrates Court to pay a traffic ticket. Yeah, I mean, we probably don't understand the extent to which our systems are antiquated and are just slow because they're overburdened. And I'm not saying that the persons who are employed in these agencies are not giving up their best, but it's just the way the system is now. Placing additional burden on a system like that I'm not seeing that is going to be effective in any way. So, Mr. Vice President, and the preliminary inquiry is supposed to ensure that before someone is tried for indictable offense, that the investigating authorities have sufficient evidence to establish a prima facie case. And a judicial officer is therefore detailed to make this determination before this citizen is subject to trial and the potential removal of his liberties. A judicial officer. For as much as Mr. Vice President, I have to have faith and trust in the system. The judicial officers serve a critical role in this process. And I'm not having, we're talking about a man's liberty. A man's liberty. And again, this is not to cast any aspersions on the honorable, very respectable, very, very professional on the DPP that we have, and all of his staff. But I think that is a burden that is too much for them. I think that is too much for them. And then as a citizen, I think the Senator Sober spoke to an issue about giving an example of a statement being concocted, allegedly. And if without the ability to cross-examine we have to understand the reality of the system that we're working in. And this is not something that is way out of the realm of possibility. I will not be long, Mr. Vice President. I just wanted to make a couple of points, because a lot of other points have been made. Mr. Vice President, my colleague here, Senator Roach, made mention of the significant budgetary expenditure being attached to the Ministry of National Security over the years, many billions of dollars. And it is only during this debate I found out about the paucity of judges and masters that we have in Trinidad and Tobago. Why haven't we spent more money building more courts? Why haven't we spent more money getting more administrative staff? And if need be, build a couple more jails? We need to, and I'm not saying that it's the panacea to fix the problems, but if the question that we're trying to address with this bill is to remove some of the administrative burdens within the existing system, I am not yet convinced that removing the preliminary inquiry will address that problem. I am not convinced at this point in time. I will eagerly await the Attorney General's response. One of the other key things about a preliminary inquiry, Mr. Vice President, is that it provides a reliable, permanent recording of the admissible evidence so that in the absence of a witness, the deposition can be given to a judge before a judicial officer. I think that from my thinking, something that is sworn before a judicial officer has a lot more weight than a statement taken by a member of the police service. It just has more weight. If anyone wants to argue that with me, we can discuss it over lunch. But where I sit, if you tell me you have two pieces of evidence and one is something sworn before a judicial officer and one is from the police at the police station, I don't think anybody would argue about which one would carry more weight. I don't think so. So that from where I sit, I think that the legislation provides now for something that in my view is of lesser weight, having the possibility of removing a man's liberty. I am really deeply concerned about that. I am struggling with that. And Mr. Vice President, let me be clear. I've been on record here. Crime is out of control in this country. I'm not making any case to support criminal activity. In the same way I've been on the record here, there's zero corruption in this corruption. Why? Because no one has ever been convicted and arrested. None, not a single person. There's no white-collar crime in Trinidad and Tobago, as the SEC. There's no crime. But blue-collar crime and other types of crime, well reported. But the big guys continue to do what they're doing. So, Mr. Vice President, let me come back to the bill. The ability of this system, Mr. Vice President, my comfort is level with the ability of this bill to have a meaningful impact on the way in which the justice system operates, given the reality of how it operates now, the paucity of judges, the paucity of facilities, and then I don't even want to get into the condition of some of the magistrates' courts and some of probably some of us need to probably go on a tour and see some of the facilities that the judges and magistrates have to operate within, and the judicial officers. Perhaps we need to go on a tour and to understand, and so that the system itself is challenged. And I want to go back to the Honorable Prime Minister's position, and I'm happy to be corrected if my recollection is wrong. I sat riveted to Senator Creasy's astute leadership of a joint select committee last evening. Went to bed very late. But the Honorable Prime Minister was clear. Could not unleash the legislation on the system because the system is not ready. The system needed to be prepared for it. And I'm saying, if that is his logic in responding to that issue, that is I like that logic. I support that logic. Let's try to make sure the system is ready first, or at least as a parallel activity. What I'm seeing here is that we're preparing to overburden the system and then probably going to try to figure out how to fix the system going forward. In the meantime, the system is going to collapse, potentially, Mr. Vice President. So, Mr. Vice President, I think that we have to be careful. Mr. Vice President, we have to be careful. We have to be careful, Madam President, that in looking at what we're trying to do here with this bill, that justice is jettisoned in the interest of perceived expedition. I'm scared about that, Madam President, that the proclivity of persons to be untruthful in this society on various issues is high. And for the ability for person or persons unknown to contrive evidence or contrive information, and then we have a lower bar that allows the removal of someone's liberty, I'm concerned about that. So, Madam President, I don't want to repeat a lot of what has been said, because a lot has been said. I eagerly await the response of the Attorney General, because from where I sit as a regular, normal person in Trinidad and Tobago, we have challenges in this country. And I am excited to hear about ways in which we can fix some of those problems. But I want us to be careful. I would like all of us to understand that where we are talking about a man's liberty, the liberty of a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, and it appears that the bar is being lowered, for want of a better phrase, in terms of the things that could impact or negatively impact that person's liberty, I think we should err on the side of caution. I think that this bill could have used some additional viewing by parties who are versed in the criminal activity, and some additional time to clean up some of these issues. We've had a long history in this Parliament of issues like several issues, for instance, procurement, insurance, that have gone to committees and have gone under exhaustive review to try to make sure that when we bring it here, we try to cover as many of the challenges as possible. However, in this case, the bill is here. And I would always be the first to say that when a bill is here, we try to do our best, but I am deeply concerned, Madam President, and I just wanted the opportunity to share my concerns with the bill, on this bill, and I look forward to hearing the Honorable Attorney General and how he's going to treat to some of those concerns. And with those few words, Madam President, I thank you.
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam President. I must apologize. I had stood up earlier not knowing that Senator Small was going to speak, because he had indicated that he was not. So I'm very pleased that he has, in fact. Madam President, I want to address a few general issues and then a few specific issues. I want to start off by saying that we're here on the 19th of September 2017, dealing with this debate. I had heard my learned colleague, Senator Ramdeen, usual persuasive contributions by Senator Ramdeen, make the observation that the government took a whole 9 weeks to come back to deal with this work. But I want to remind, in particular, Senator Mahabir, that we had a mandatory recess. We were told specifically that senators were tired and that they needed to take their break and that we would not be meeting at the break, because we had asked, in fact, for this debate, the preliminary inquiries, to start prior to the mandatory recess. Senator Mahabir remembers well what I'm saying. We had umpteen discussions, and there was a clear and absolute stance taken by the coordinator of the independent bench and the leader of the chief whip for the opposition, that under no circumstances would they be rushed because senators were quote-unquote tired. We had heard the Honorable Senator Roach speak today about a truism. There's a truth. Our parliamentary system is not the most adequate system. And this harkens back to Senator Mahabir's reasonable suggestion that the break had to come. I don't, for one moment, wish that to be taken in any pejorative sense. The fact is that our parliament is constructed upon our constitution. Our constitution requires that debate commence in the House for bills. We do not have a system of pre-working in our parliament because our constitution requires that we come to the parliament to address the law in the fashion that we do. It's true that in the last parliament, the 10th Republican Parliament, certainly when I sat as an opposition senator, we would go until 6 a.m. in the morning. That was standard practice. But we haven't crossed, unless it was exceptional circumstances and maybe 1 or 2 days at most, 10 o'clock at night. So most respectfully, honorable senators are reminded that this government has taken a very different approach to legislation. Senators are provided with track change documents, marked up versions of documents in the bill, fulsome discussion, if necessary, going to special select committees, etc. And the work that the Office of the Attorney General has brought to the Parliament didn't happen by VAPs. And the approach is certainly a very different approach from any other Parliament on record. And I could speak with certainty when I say that. Is it hard work? Yes. Does it require stretching ourselves? Yes. But we each came here voluntarily. We all had an option to say no, respectfully. I'm a little passionate about this because I hear a lot of complaints. I was in opposition. I had a very busy private practice. I turned up in the Senate every single time and I did my job. So when I hear opposition senators tell me that they're tired, I understand. I've been there, I've done that. I have seen very good work come from the opposition bench. I can say that openly, and from the independent bench. I think we've distinguished ourselves as a Senate in particular in the kind of work that we have done. So let's just put it into perspective. 45 minutes to pilot a bill and give the wish list of every single thing that all senators want to hear is an impossibility. Because the bill itself is 45 clauses long. 5 schedules, 43 clauses and 5 schedules. If I spent a minute on each one of the clauses, I'd cross the time. So let's be serious and let's be fair when honorable senators generously stand to give criticism about this and that. Our system doesn't allow it. Plus, we still have to go to a committee of the whole of the Senate, and that's where we get our best work. And the opposition is well aware, as is the independent bench, that we have listened carefully in every debate. This hasn't been a government which comes and says, take it or leave it, unless there's a pure position of policy that we can't resile from, and then we beg to disagree, and then the numbers speak. It's why we have an adversarial system in a Westminster-style parliament, where it's in fact a Whitehall-style parliament. It's not the best system. The leader of the opposition and the Honourable Prime Minister, in fact, agreed that there were certain broader issues to speak about, and that work is afoot. Let's talk to this bill. Generally, honourable senators have said, what's your consultation process? Tell us about your operationalization. Tell us about your readiness for system. Senator Creese said that this bill required more work, more detail. Senator Small, a little while ago, reflected upon whether we were taking a retro step and whether we're going to, in fact, be bringing the lives of persons into disadvantage as opposed to advantage. Let's start from the facts. We are talking about 100 years of preliminary inquiries. The evidence on the record is that we have 29,090 cases which are indictable preliminary inquiries in the system right now. The evidence is that cross-examination in the preliminary inquiry is such that there's an extension of time to the point where we have cases going on for 17 and 18 years in preliminary inquiry. Senator Choate spoke in this debate. She, as we all know, eminent senior counsel, is a representative in the longest running fraud case in Trinidad and Tobago in preliminary inquiries. So she would know it better than most. The fact is that after 100 years of preliminary inquiries, we are in a system where we have a massive backlog, and the disposition rates which we have provided to the Parliament demonstrate that we continue to throw matters into arrears with a less than 40% disposition rate for current matters. So we're adding 60% to the backlog every year that we go forward. Common sense tells us that we are to at least deal with the go-forward position in a sensible way. And what is being prescribed here is that the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions takes the lead in dealing with the decision as to whether there should be an indictment for an offense or not, whether the matter should go summarily or not. And we say so based upon the Constitution itself providing that the Office of the DPP has that power under Section 90 of the Constitution. The argument has been floated that the DPP's office is not an independent office. The argument has been floated that there is a veto power of the Prime Minister under Section 113 of the Constitution, and that therefore there is some form of political interference into the office of the DPP. The office of the FIU has the same positions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition, as Prime Minister, vetoed the appointment of one officer and selected another officer who has been sitting in place. That's part of our Westminster system. That's part of our Constitution. But where the remedy is to be had is in Section 136 of the Constitution, in particular subsections 4 and 5, where the office of the DPP is insulated such that his salaries are charged on the consolidated fund, and that his terms and conditions cannot be varied to his disadvantage, and that he is subjected to the Judicial and Legal Services Commission and not to any political master. Honourable members, we don't read law in a vacuum. We have said for the entire time that we have been in discussion on the criminal justice system that this is a multifaceted approach. Senator Sobers reflected on one of my favorite expressions, it's a suite of legislation. No one bill can be a panacea cure for all of this. We do know that 20 attorneys at law control the criminal bar. Full stop. We do know that counsel of choice is a delay factor because persons say my attorney is not ready. Senator Sturge knows what I'm talking about. We do know that the Director of Public Prosecutions conducts about 8% of the current prosecutions and that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service conducts the balance. We do know that judicial capacity is a concern. We do know that forensics is a concern. We do know that ensuring that the rise and sit times are managed at the judiciary are of concern. We heard Senator Dollaby, and I congratulate her on her maiden speech. She did it bravely, and I congratulate her. The position of using night courts, etc., that's respectfully mistaken. In our solution application, let me speak to what we have done. The country witnessed in the period 2010 to 2015 an expenditure of $41 billion on national security and the judicial sector and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. It was $15.7 billion on the TTPS, and it was $26 billion, taking us to nearly $42 billion. $26 billion spent across Ministry of National Security, Office of the Prime Minister, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Communications, and the Attorney General's Office. $42 billion. It's true we need more courts. It's true we need more judges. It's true we need more prosecutors. It's true we need a harmonized system of case management. It's true we need better forensics. And it is true that we have lost 94% of our revenue as a country. So what has this government done to ready us for this bill? Number one, honorable senators participated in the debate on the Children and Family Division. Honorable senators will recall that we increased the judicial complement in the Court of Appeal and in the High Court. Honorable senators are aware that we did construct 2 new courts to take the Children and Family Division. Honorable senators are aware that we cannot agree with Senator Amin's submission. Don't tell me about rented courts because you have to build the court. It's a court, is a court, is a court. The Arima court, which is rented, the magistrates court for umpteen years, is a rented court. Shogunas rented, other places rented. The fact is, does the court function or not? In the Children and Family Division, which now takes a load away from the existing structure, so you're shunting work into that area, 13,000 persons have been interviewed for positions in that court. We talked about, are we providing administrative structures to the judiciary? Yes. More judges, financial backing and support, more administrative staff. So that's point number one. Doing more with less intersects with that. We've talked for years about the state and condition of the San Fernando Magistrates Court. Right now, yes, we are running, as Senator Ramney put it so cleverly, a shift system. We are, in fact, operating in the High Court and in the Magistrates Court while we fix the roof. Was it done before? No. Has it been done now? Yes. But what next? We went into the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and what we did from an executive point of view was we said to the Director of Public Prosecutions, you have unfilled positions. Please let us supplement those positions for you and provide the staff that we have. So we urged the JLSC to fill all State Council 1 positions, and all are filled. Full stop. They were not filled for the 5 years prior to our tenure, but we agitated and we had them filled. Currently, the 2 deputy DPP's positions are open. The assistant DPP, there are 3 positions open. There are 12 positions open for senior state counsel. There are 11 positions open for State Council 3, and there are 34 positions for State Council 2. A total of 62 positions open. I have instructed the permanent secretary, and she has complied, to write and call the DPP every single Monday morning. Why? Because the positions to be filled depend upon the DPP's recommendations. In other words, they are out of the hands of the executive and the JLSC. The DPP must say what he's doing with it. And religiously, every single Monday, there's a phone call, there's a request for meeting, and the letters that go. Because I believe in being the squeaky wheel. What else have we done? The DPP's undercapacity was a serious issue for a very long time. The DPP's accommodation for the 5 years prior that I was there certainly wasn't dealt with. But I can tell you that the South office for the DPP has been signed off because the executive had the capacity to do that. That was given. The Port of Spain office has been signed off by the executive. It is now for the DPP to tell us how he wishes to outfit the offices. And religiously, every Monday that call is made. Please may we have your confirmation. Please may we have your confirmation. Please may we have your confirmation. I can only do my part. The office of the DPP is an independent entity, and we have an excellent DPP installed, but the DPP has to have his input into the process. What I can tell you in preparation for this bill is that the office of the DPP was working without a computer management software system that was adequate. And the executive has supplied a computer management system that is adequate. And that has rolled out, and it is being implemented, and we have had face-to-face meetings, and we're working out the bugs on that. What I can tell you is that the criminal proceedings rules, which deal with whether you need night courts or not, it's not that we need night courts, you know. When you get to a magistrate's court, and they spend the whole half of the morning adjourning matters which are not ready because they're on a list, or the magistrate didn't turn up, what was required was to make sure that matters started that could start, matters that you knew that weren't going to start were put off or rescheduled, and that time frames were allotted. So a priority item for operationalization of the structure which we propose in this bill for us was to ensure that the criminal proceedings rules saw the light of day. And 16 years after they were first discussed, because we started speaking about them around the time that we had the Wolf Report and leading to the civil procedure rules, which radically transformed our system. 16 years later, we had the pleasure of introducing the criminal proceedings rules. But what do we do further? In building out the Family and Children Division of the High Court, the Honorable Chief Justice recommended, and the government supported, that he attend in Nigeria to receive software, which was to the advantage of the judiciary. And we got software for free from the government of Nigeria. And that software has been applied to the Children and Family Division, and it has been bettered by the government of Spain, where we migrate from millions of dollars of legal costs in software management and licensing fees and source code retention and escrow arrangements to a glorious $5,000 full stop for the year, and have therefore saved massive amount of money and applied a computer system which is now being applied to the magistracy for the first time ever in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. So we don't have to rely upon judicial memory or longhand note-taking or a book that went lost or a book that went missing, that it is computerized in the same fashion as the GEM system or other systems in the High Court. So that you know how many matters are docketed before which judge, you know the disposition rates, you know the progress points. Now that might sound simple to honorable members, but these are radical steps that are absolutely essential to making sure your system works. The Honorable Chief Justice yesterday, in focusing upon the need for focus on criminal justice reform, reflected upon another incredibly important issue which affects this bill: the transition of documentary evidence from the courts to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions under the current law requires, when a committal has been made, that the papers are then sent to the DPP, transcripts and all, and the DPP then gives an indictment which goes to the High Court. So all papers go to the DPP right now under the Preliminary Inquiries Act, Chapter 1201. All. We are saying, take it there anyway. So the bill proposes that. But the transcription is critical. And instead of going for oral examination and cross-examination, and I heard Senator Sobers, and I understand why he wrestled with whether one ought to approve or disapprove or disallow cross-examination. Cross-examination on evidence and further evidence is the reason why our system is in problems. Cross-examination in existing matters up to 17 years. Without going into the merits of the Piarco matter, we are now dealing with further evidence in Piarco number 2 with a judicial review, and I'll say no more. That's 17 years later. The fact is that dealing with computer transcription is a key factor. So what did your government do? The government approved the transcription services for the whole of Trinidad and Tobago, as we have sitting here in the Parliament, with the computer-aided transcription services, but we've gone a step further to support the judiciary in its move to have stenomasks and digital voice recordings, which can be done remotely. That means that the paper management moves faster. So when we speak to operationalization, we are well advanced. The Honorable Senator Small reflected upon the Prime Minister's contribution yesterday, as he heard on television in the Joint Select Committee, as to why the public procurement law was not implemented. He spoke, the Honorable Prime Minister, as he did, to what our government has done. We couldn't cater for the fact that nothing was done prior. We had to deal with the position as we inherited. So the position of readiness for us is a matter of getting the minutiae dealt with. This bill is framework legislation. It's not prescriptive legislation. What's the difference? Framework gives you the general ballpark features, and then you drill down to the details by way of subsidiary legislation, rules, regulations. Some of it done by the Rules Committee, which is the committee which is comprised of the Chief Justice and the bar, etc., where we fashion the rules as to how the courts will operate. And some of it is done by way of regulations, which may or may not come to the Parliament for affirmative or negative resolution. This bill is built upon that. But honourable members, most respectfully, tell us that more is required. More analysis is required. Let's stop and think a little bit more. We hear about the human rights. Senator Small reflected upon it. A man's liberty is at stake, but a man's liberty right now sees him incarcerated for 17 years in pre-trial detention. That's the existing position. And if you ask the average person on remand what they want most, one word: trial. Does this bill take us to a better chance of a trial? Yes. Because it eliminates massive delay in pre-trial procedures. Where did this idea come from? This idea came from a consultation process commenced by the last government, conducted by Dana Sita-Hall herself, God rest her soul. And in it, for consideration, was a position by the judiciary, which was considered by the last government. And here's the paragraph in the consultation paper. It's called Consultation in Drafting the Indictable Offences Committal Proceedings Bill 2014, prepared by Dana Sita-Hall. And she says this: the second comment of the judiciary is to the effect that indictable proceedings must be commenced in the High Court with an indictment filed by the DPP and then to be tried. This was not adopted as it is felt to be too radical at this stage. That's where this idea came from. The last government had a lawful mandate, spent close to $400 billion, saw 2 indictable offences bills come about, and nothing happened. If you take contingent liabilities and you add it to actual expenditure. Last government left us bankrupt. Bankrupt. We are wrestling in one of the worst economic positions that our country has seen. There are months in Trinidad and Tobago where you can't do more as a government than pay salaries. And the fact is that there are some very merry persons who think that that's not an issue. I would, of course, not referring to Senator Mark. Honourable senators are aware that after 100 years of preliminary inquiries, going nowhere, system getting worse, 40% disposition rate, 60% added into backlog, operational issues on the deck which are being dealt with, honourable senators reflecting upon the motor vehicle and road traffic amendments, the Children and Family Division Bill to shunt work away from the centralized core system of the courts. These are not small measures. It requires honourable senators to put the pieces together. 45 minutes doesn't give you the luxury to put all of that together. It's what you have a wrap-up for. But the fact is that after 5 years of the UNC's approach, respectfully, if they're not in a political position to support, c'est la vie. The government has a mandate to carry out. We have come with proposals for consideration by the members of the Honourable Senate. We believe that they are grounded in pure constitutionality from the supreme law of Trinidad and Tobago. We are speaking to the operationalization mechanisms in the areas that matter. Senator Sobers, the position of the recovery of forensics and the move to a new venture, we will speak to that in the budget. It's for us to perform. We will account for what we do. The fact is that it's being done. We will speak to DNA. We will speak to sexual offences. We will speak to all of the operational measures that we will reveal for the population, because we'll be judged on our performance, not our old talk. The fact is, honourable senators have reflected upon a few specific issues. In the specific issues, we've really referred to, number 1, Section 14, Section 15, Section 16, Section 22, Section 38. Those are the 5 sections that stand out in terms of the repeating of issues that have come up over and over again. Sections 14, 15, and 16, under the part of the bill, which is really the operational part of the bill, dealing with the DPP's movement of files, etc. The question has been asked, what are the sanctions? It would be dangerous for a government to include sanctions as to movement times, etc., in certain areas, as honourable members suggest. Because despite the negative reflection by some members, I've trawled through all of the Hansard and I could hardly find recommendations. I hear a generalized statement, but I have no specifics as to what is really wrong in the minds of honourable senators. I hear a lot of generalizations. Well, I'm not sure, and I don't know, and I don't practice in the arena, and what if, and what about? The fact is, where there is a silence as to a time frame, Section 23 of the Interpretation Act kicks in, and it must be done within a specific time frame which is deemed to be a reasonable time frame, as soon as is practicable. Can the rules of the court step in to deal with that by way of amendments to the criminal proceedings rules? Yes. Can we set prescriptive timelines? Yes. Can there be practice directions, as we've had with other areas of the law? Yes. In other words, then, can the framework structure of sections 14, 15, and 16 survive? Yes. Honourable senators on the opposition bench have reflected that, and in fact, Senator Choate said it, I can't see that anybody is going to give their statement and their defense, because no sensible lawyer will advise you to do that. Well, isn't that what paper committals in the 2014 bill did? Insofar as there is discovery and disclosure as a requirement at the court, disclosure at common law or disclosure under the CPR as it is set out, the criminal proceedings rules, requires that there is disclosure. But there is still a technicality. If you wish to give your side of the story within the context of sections 15 and 16, then you must cater for it in law. It's an option to be used or not. So saying that it should not be there is to not take avail of the fact that you must cater for it anyway. Honourable senators have gone on about section 22. And I've heard the statement that section 22 is the new section 34. And I asked Senator Sobers across the floor, how? Section 34, for the record of Act number 20 of 2011, was very specific. Section 34 specifically spoke to the court shall discharge a matter where proceedings are instituted on or after the coming into force of this act and the master is not within 12 months after the proceedings are instituted in a position to order that the accused be put on trial, the master shall discharge the accused and a verdict of not guilty shall be recorded. It is vastly different from what appears in this bill at section 22, at clause 22. Clause 22(2), where the Director of Public Prosecutions does not prefer an indictment against the accused person within 12 months after the expiration of the period provided for in section 16, or within such further period as a magistrate may on application permit, the accused may apply to a judge for discharge. How on earth could shall and may be the same? Most respectfully, it is pellucidly clear that you must put at least a riding obligation on the DPP to track matters. And if the DPP is not going to be in a position after the 18 months, 3 months plus 3 months plus 12, to volunteer a position, then the DPP must go to court and ask for an extension of time. It is why we wrestled with Clause 34 in the 2011 bill as it became Section 34, because it was agreed unanimously in that Senate and House, subject to the undertakings of the government then, that they would not proclaim the law until certain things were put into place, which they breached flagrantly. But it was the conscious reflection that to deal with our backlog, that there needed to be a dynamite. And that was where the 10-year prescription was unanimously agreed, but subject to the government's specific undertaking on the record that they would not proclaim the law until all masters had been appointed, the rules had been applied, and the courts constructed. And that is in black and white on the record. I heard Senator Choate refer to it and say both sides agreed to the bill. Yes, both sides agreed to the concept in the bill, but the opposition then, now government, specifically agreed that it would not apply until the undertakings were given, and Mr. Justice Volney, Minister of Justice, gave a specific undertaking that the bill would not be proclaimed. What happened? For the record, Section 34 came alive by virtue of a cabinet decision on the 9th of August 2012, which was confirmed on the 16th of August 2012, where specifically the Minister of Justice came and said, and this is at paragraph 7 of the note for cabinet, number 2119, the Minister of Justice further recommends that Section 32 and Section 34 and Schedule 6 of the Act be proclaimed with effect from August 31st, 2012, in order to facilitate the introduction of delay provisions and the early tabling of the rules of court for the purpose of proceedings under the Act for approval by the Parliament. That was not a decision which the opposition participated in. It was a decision of the following persons: Kamla Prasad Bisesa, Anand Ramlogan, Delman Baker, Nizam Baksh, Clifton Dekoto, Winston Dukaran, Lincoln Douglas, Tim Gopi Singh, Rupert Griffith, Errol MacLeod, Rudal Munilal, Winston Peters, Prakash Ramadar, Glenn Ramadar Singh, Suraj Ratan Rambachan, Anil Roberts, Chandra Sharma, Herbert Volney, Jack Warner, Vasant Bharat, Marlene Kudri, Emmanuel George, Larry Hawaii, Fazal Karim, Devant Maraj, Jamal Mohammed, Kevin Ramnarain, Ganga Singh, and Bohindradat Tiwari. And that is specifically how Section 34 became live. I've just read it out. People have asked for years where it came from. I've just given you the answer. And it was confirmed by the same people in accordance with standard practice 1 week later by the Honorable Prime Minister signing on both occasions. On the 16th of August, she confirmed the note. That's Section 34.
Madam President.
So when we hear Honorable Senators talk about Section 22, Clause 20.
Point of order.
Senator Mark, what is the point?
The point of order, Madam President, is that if you are reading a document, no, Madam President, if you are reading a document, you ought to be able to supply that document.
Senator Mark, please take your seat. Attorney General, please continue.
It is embarrassing to see that. Madam President, the fact is, number one, Clause 22 of this bill is in no form or reflection a mandatory section as Section 34 was. And secondly, Section 34, as it became alive into the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, was a sole decision of the persons that I've just named. Nowhere in the cabinet process for proclamation is the opposition, at all, especially when there's an undertaking on the record. So, Madam President, the recommendations of members opposite just don't ring true. It's true that the law must be stated for the average man to understand. It's true. But it's also true that the law is a specialized area and that the law must be construed by the judiciary and worked and practiced by lawyers. Can we translate that into simple English in the easiest way possible? Not necessarily. It's why you have lawyers. But I want to put onto the record that when we heard the contribution of Senator Dolabai say that this is a PR tactic in a rush, I want to put this on the record. This bill was tabled, first read in the House on the 23rd of February 2017. The debate in the House was 6th of March, 15th March, 17th March. It was laid in this House, the Senate, on the 21st of March 2017. We started on the 14th of September. We're on the 19th of September. There's no rush in this bill. It's been on the order paper. There's been room for consultation, and who did we consult? We consulted the following persons: the Director of Public Prosecutions, certain members of the criminal bar, including Mr. Peterson, Mrs. Elder, Mr. Ravi Rajkumar. We dealt with the judiciary through the Administrative Secretary of the Judiciary. We dealt with the President of the Criminal Bar Association. We dealt with the President of the Law Association and the Law Association. Specifically, we sat in a committee with the several members of the interministerial committee that sits together with the Chief Justice and other persons, and they include appellate judges, they include High Court judges, the Chief Magistrate, the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Minister of National Security, the Attorney General, the Criminal Justice Advisor provided by the Government of Canada and underwritten as well by the Government of the United Kingdom. That is called the Judiciary Interministerial Justice Sector Committee, and we sat on umpteen occasions to deal with this. And the representative from the criminal bar, when asked why there was such a violent opposition by the criminal bar to this bill, said that preliminary inquiries form a good hunting ground and training ground for young lawyers. That was the answer given. And that we should leave the system as it is, because lawyers need to be trained. It's one of the arguments put forward. And the Honorable DPP, when asked directly as to whether he was in support of the bill, indicated that he was. And I can confirm now, May 12, 2016, June 16, 2016, October 28, 2016, November 1st, 2016, November 16, 2016, December 16, 2016, December 22nd, 2016, January 5th, 2017, January 13, 2017, February 3rd, 2017, contact was made with the DPP in writing, by email, by conversation, to ensure that the DPP was backing this bill. So did we speak to the DPP? Yes.
You have it in writing?
Did we speak to the Bar Association? Yes. Senator Ramdeen will know, any member who's a member of the Law Association will know, Senator Sobers will know. We have written to the Law Association on umpteen occasions. I can't beg the Law Association to give me contributions. It's on their website. It is there. If they choose not to do, and that's the state of the legal profession, because the Law Association as a conduit for contribution sends out to every member of the legal profession and says, this bill is out for public comment. The AG wants your comments. Please send them in. If I don't get any comments, am I to wait until some lawyer decides that he's ready to give me some contribution, or do we press on with the work? Was this supported by the criminal justice expert advice provided for by the Government of Canada and the Government of the United Kingdom? Fulsomely. Is there precedent? Yes. Does the Constitution provide the authority to do this? Yes. How much more analysis are we to engage in, respectfully? Everybody wants a solution, but nobody wants to participate. Take the cut, but don't cut me. And so, Madam President, what we have is a position. I'm making sure that Senator Mark can hear me from this distance, because I'm sitting on the back bench. Senator Mark is no stranger to volume.
General,
yes.
Honorable Attorney General, you have 5 more minutes.
Madam Speaker, I will say this. Madam President, one moment.
Madam President, in accordance with Standing Order 48.4, I beg to move that the debate on the Indictable Offences Pre-Trial Procedure Bill 2017 be adjourned.
Honourable members, the question is that the debate on the Indictable Offences Pre-Trial Procedure Bill 2017 be adjourned. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Madam President, in accordance with Standing Order 77, I beg to move that the following bill be restored to the order paper in the 3rd session of the 11th Parliament. The Indictable Offences Pre-Trial Procedure Bill 2017.
Honourable Senators, the question is that the following bill be restored to the order paper in the 3rd session of the 11th Parliament. The Indictable Offences Pre-Trial Procedure Bill 2017. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against?
No.
The ayes have it.
Madam President, as we come to the end of the second session, 2016-2017 of the 11th Parliament, before I move the adjournment, I want to just thank my colleagues on this side of the House, the opposition bench and the independent bench for what I think was a fairly productive second session of the 11th Parliament, and I draw particular reference to the support, especially during committee stages, over the last period here, where there were various crime bills that were very, very complicated in law, in my opinion, and I think we got the support of the opposition and the independent bench in working the legislation through to its finality. So in that context, Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the Senate now do adjourn, sine die.
Honourable Senators, before I put the question, I will now invite senators to bring greetings on the occasion of Republic Day, which is being celebrated on Sunday, September the 24th, 2017. Minister of Trade and Industry.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Trinidad and Tobago became a republic on August 1st, 1976. This year, we commemorate our 41st year as a republic. As a nation, Trinidad and Tobago has made tremendous strides in our development, which we can see and feel as we go about our daily lives as a people under one flag and one constitution. To bring about such a meaningful and independent status, the conversion of the former constitution from its character as an order in council of the Queen into that of an indigenous instrument of government fashioned by citizens of Trinidad and Tobago was effected by the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, enacting the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago Act 1976. Whilst there is much to celebrate, and indeed we are blessed, we are a nation in the throes of adjustment in many ways. Let us collaborate, citizens, academia, private sector, and government, and all commit to a more dynamic role in nation building, and as we take our country forward and towards further economic growth. Let the national narrative and ethos be a positive one, of trust and of service, of confidence and of faith, of love and obedience to law and order. In the wake of the many crises of the world and in our region, may we resolve always to be our brother's keeper, recognizing how fortunate we are in Trinidad and Tobago. On behalf of the Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, may I wish a happy Republic Day to all citizens of our great country. May God bless us all and continue to keep us. Amen. Thank you.
Senator Mark.
Well said, well said, well said. Yes, Madam President, on behalf of the alternative government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the United National Congress and its partners, we would like to join with you and with our honorable colleagues on the other side in bringing greetings to the people of this great republic. Madam President, although, as you are aware, Republic Day is celebrated on the 24th of September, we all know that the day that it was proclaimed under an act of Parliament was the 1st of August, and really the Republic Day 24th really marked the first sitting of the first Parliament under the Republican Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. But you know, 41 years after taking direct responsibility for our own affairs, after 41 years of shedding the monarchical system that we were under for several decades before as a country, colonial rule and from independence to 1976. There are still many shortcomings, many limitations, many deficiencies that we face as a nation. There is need for greater involvement, greater participation by the citizenry in the decision-making processes of our republic. There is need for us to translate sections 4 and 5 of our Constitution, where we talk about entrenched human rights and freedoms, and to give more meaning to those entrenched rights and freedoms. Just a few days ago, we saw a fundamental freedom and right being trampled upon by a private citizen, a private company, against the press of this country. The freedom of the press, which is an enshrined right under our Constitution. So when we talk about the Republican Constitution, we are talking about living and experiencing, Madam President, those fundamental rights. If my friend is not aware, those fundamental rights are in our 1976 Constitution. So, Madam President, we would like, as we move towards another year to celebrate our republicanism status as a twin island republic state, we look forward to a government and the government taking into account the needs, the dreams, the hopes, and the aspirations of the citizenry of our great republic. And Madam President, on behalf of this alternative government of the Republic of TNT, we want to wish you and your family a happy Republic Day. We want to extend to His Excellency a happy Republic Day. We want to extend to all our leaders in our country. We want to extend to the citizenry of our country a very positive, a very happy, a very productive Republic Day. Because as we move forward, Madam President, into the 42nd year, next year, to celebrate Republic Day, we want to ensure that Trinidad and Tobago work towards realizing not only just another society, but a more just society, a more fair society, a more equal society, where every creed and race will find an equal place. So, Madam President, we thank you for this opportunity to extend to you and to the national community of TNT Happy Republic Day. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Senator Mahabir.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for this opportunity to bring, on behalf of the independent bench of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Republic Day greetings to the national community of our republic. Madam President, Republic Day gives us an opportunity as a society to reflect on our maturity. And we know that our Republican status has imposed upon the country certain rights, but also major responsibilities. Responsibilities for law and order. Our police commissioner is no longer appointed out of the colonial office in the United Kingdom. We are responsible for securing our borders. We are totally responsible for poverty alleviation. That was something that the colonial office participated in heavily via the recommendations of the Moyne Commission in the 1940s. We are responsible for our own infrastructure development, whether our bridges, our ferries, our communication systems are in order is entirely our responsibility. We are responsible for the management of the public finances, totally. If we run huge public debts, we do not have an external agency to assist us in the manner in which some European countries, such as Greece, would have a European Central Bank to assist them when they contract huge debts that they cannot pay. We are totally responsible for all of our debts. We are responsible for the care of the elderly, the education of the young. We are responsible for social harmony. Madam President, over the last 41 years, we have been making valuable strides in these areas. We have been making progress of which the country can and should be proud. We have done in this chamber and in the other place good service with respect to defending the Republican Constitution. The debates in this chamber are an indication that democracy is alive and well, and we all are respectful of the Constitution. There is a great deal to be done in Trinidad and Tobago. We recognize our responsibility. As I bring greetings and as I reflect myself, I say, let us celebrate all of our achievements and let us reflect on our shortcomings so that next year we will move a little further towards ensuring that the society that Trinidad and Tobago can become, based upon our full Republican status, will have a better chance of being realized. Greetings to all on Republic Day and a most sagacious period of reflection on what we have achieved and what is to come. Thank you, Madam President.
Honourable Senators, permit me to join with the previous speakers in congratulating our country as we celebrate our 41st year as a republic. As we have heard, we first became a republic on August 1st, 1976. Yet we celebrate Republic Day on the 24th of September, as that was the first day in which the first Parliament met under the new Republican Constitution. As parliamentarians comprising the 11th Parliament, we therefore acknowledge and are grateful to those who first served in 1976 and who paved the way for the successive parliaments. Achieving Republican status some 14 years after independence cemented our political and democratic maturity and highlighted our belief in ourselves as a country. Honourable Senators, before I close, I would ask you to please remember in your thoughts and prayers our Caribbean neighbours who have been suffering in the last few weeks, and now some of which are feeling the brunt of a new hurricane. I ask you, as we celebrate Republic Day, and as we celebrate all that is good and all that we are blessed with in Trinidad and Tobago, that we remember those Caribbean countries. So, Honourable Senators, it is my joy to wish each and every one of you a happy Republic Day. Honourable Senators, the question is that this Senate now stand adjourned, sine die. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. This Senate now stands adjourned, sine die.